Starting soon.
Hi guys, welcome to another live stream here with Album Book Club. Tonight we are talking about Figure 8, one of Eliott Smith's albums. I guess his third album? I think that's right. No, fifth album. Wow, I'm super wrong. This came out in 2000. There's a little bit of background if you guys really want that, but we can talk about that in a minute. For now, we need to welcome our guest. Somebody else wants to...
Yeah, this is Howard from Unseen Keys. You've seen him before. Welcome.
Never summer.
Never summer. I'm so sorry. I'm
happy to be
same
here.
Show.
You're good, brother. You are good. You are good, my friend.
My brain does not work.
Unseen Keys, great guys. Love those guys.
All right, we will go ahead and get started with top songs and bottom songs, right?
Yep.
It was 90%.
Oh, this is gonna hurt. Okay, all right, let's hear it.
All
Top and bottom. Damn. All right.
Yeah, so for my top three, I have Can't Make a Sound, Stupidity Tries, and Everything Means Nothing to Me.
Very close, actually. For my top three, I had L.A., Stupidity Tries, and Can't Make a Sound.
I have Can't Make a Sound, L.A., and Everything Means Nothing to Me.
My top three are entirely different. I have Easy Way Out, Better Be Quiet Now, and Junk Band Trader.
Junk Band Trader. There you go. Or Junk Bond Trader. Sorry, Junk Bond Trader is.
Oh, it is Bond, isn't it?
Bond, B-O-N-D. Yeah.
Oopsies. We're done.
Okay. All right. Good choices. What's bottom tier?
What do you got for your top three?
For me? Oh,
You're
fuck. That's tough. It's YouTube. Should I watch my language? I can. I'm sorry.
We're past a minute.
It's fine.
Okay. LA has got to be up there. Son of Sam is a classic, dude. And then I'm going to put Somebody I Used to Know up there.
We're good.
Cool. Send it back.
All right, and now our bottom. So mine was actually Honky Bach.
Mine was Color Bars.
Oh. Mine was In the Lost and Found.
Mine was Wouldn't Mama Be Proud?
So just hopping on the live broadcast to get hurt. That's crazy.
That's what everybody does.
No. It's valid. You really didn't like In the Lost and Found or Honky Bach? Same thing.
I could talk about it when we get to the track, but that piano sample just,
Oh.
or the piano itself, whatever it was just grinding.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah. You have a note about
If
that?
I had to pick number one skip on this album, probably Everything Reminds Me of Her.
Valid choice.
Yeah, that's
Damn.
very valid too. Yeah, I think that was probably the second from my bottom.
Not here fucking up. I just want to apologize again. I completely fucked your band up.
You're good, bro. They're good dudes. I like Unseen Keys.
I can talk. I mean, this album does have some cool background. Eliott Smith himself has some cool background. That's kind of what I was reading here before we get started. I just thought this was really funny. One of my favorite drummers happens to be on this album, Joey Waronker. Played in a lot of stuff throughout LA. Probably most known for playing with Beck, but the drums on this album are killer. But that's a random fact because Eliott Smith's legal name is Steve, and he changed his name away from Steve Smith, drummer of Journey, which is another one of my favorite drummers. I just thought that was an interesting coincidence. Talking about this album specifically, probably the coolest fact is part of it was recorded at Abbey Road. So we'll probably talk about some of the Beatles influence and some of the sound that comes from that later on, because it definitely sounds like a lot of that stuff at certain points. I think that was
the influence is definitely there, in which, like, people who love Eliott Smith. Figure Eight gets shat on a lot because it's like, oh, like it's so clean, it's so like radio. I guess like not even radio friendly, like mainstream, right? And I'm a huge fan of all of his work, but particularly his last 4 albums. And Figure Eight sticks out to me, where it's like, it doesn't necessarily mean that clean and radio friendly is a bad thing. Like, these songs have a shit ton of meaning. They're really good, at least in my eyes. But it definitely does get a bad rep because of the Abbey Road thing.
I could see that. It's definitely more produced than a lot of his other stuff. I think that's really
For sure
what the thing is. And then we'll talk about that too, because there's a lot of perfect moments on this album, as far as especially like orchestration and production and kind of the layout of the tunes. That it's just impeccable. And that it definitely is not much like his other albums when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, it's very well done. Not that his other albums are bad. They're just more realistic.
Yeah, I would say not as fine-tuned, right? Like more raw. His other albums are definitely more raw.
Organic would probably be the
yeah.
They're more organic.
Yeah.
I'd say this felt like a theory nightmare because it all made sense in a weird roundabout way, but some of the songs were like stretching music theory about as far as you could get it thin. I'm like, all right, this was mathematical. Why did I say it that way?
All right. You guys ready to start song by song?
Oh yeah.
Cool. So track 1 is Son of Sam, which I meant to look up if it had to do with the serial killer or not. I'm sure
It does.
It does.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
It does, yep.
So I gave this one a 7.5.
I gave this one an 8.
I gave this one an 8.
I gave this one a 7.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's top 3 for me. I mean, I think it's a strong opening for the entire album.
What would you rate it?
Eliott Smith's one of my favorite artists, so that's Son of Sam. As far as Eliott goes, easy 9 for me.
Yeah, I don't think any of us rated it poorly. I guess
No. I'm just gonna be biased and be like, no, everything's a 9. It's so good, except everything reminds me of her, which is like a 4 for me. I don't really.
I don't know. Out of my notes, I actually wrote that this had good enough momentum that I thought it was kind of a good opening song to give you an idea of what you were going to get into. There's a really cool key and organ tone in this one, talking about some of the arranging and some of the stuff that was done. He always sounds like him. His vocals are always very endearing, very awesome. The acoustic guitar parts are always awesome, but the parts that I took note of on this album is just there's so much going on all the time, and it shined in this song.
Yeah, I definitely think we started off with a bit of a banger here. I really enjoyed like the melodic line itself. I had a really fun time with it, and I think it's really well structured and paced. You can tell it's somebody who really knows what they're doing when you listen to this song.
Yeah, I really liked this song, but you said like makes a good opening track. It doesn't feel like an opening track is what it's a good track, and it's
Okay, I could see that.
But it feels like the middle of the album to me, which is weird.
Yeah.
Because it kind of threw off the next song for me.
Yeah.
Now that I'm giving it I'm just looking at it track by track. I could see where you guys are like, especially talking from a momentum perspective. I could see how this album could be a little rocky for sure.
Yeah, it is very unfortunate. Albums definitely fall victim to the album book club just because sometimes they're not meant to be an album. Like this one is kind of a compilation. I know this was about 3 years before he died.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it was just a bunch of stuff kind of more thrown together. Just here's recordings we have that can make an album. So they made one. That's why it kind of doesn't work too well in the flow of it or the pacing of it, but we'll get into that later. As far as Son of Sam goes, it was very fun. It had a great groove to it. I was just enjoying it. There was a guitar solo where it had like a lot of dirt to it on a very clean mix. It kind of came out of nowhere and took me by surprise. I wasn't the biggest lover of it, but it wasn't terrible. It's just not for me. So it was a good song.
Okay.
So I didn't talk about it in the history, but someone brought it up, so we probably should talk about kind of the weirdness of his death. while we're thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's just the whole thing's weird, and there's a bunch of stories, and of course, it's not one of those things where he became famous posthumously. I mean, he was a kind of a deal when he was alive too. So even when it first happened, things were weird, and it's a really strange story. And essentially, he got stabbed in his house, but the coroner could not figure out whether he stabbed himself or someone else came in and did it. And I don't think they've ever.
Well,
go ahead.
No. Eliott had a really bad history with drugs. Figure Eight was his mainstream album, right? DreamWorks, I think, was the label behind. I don't. It must have been sold off, but DreamWorks had something to do with Figure Eight, like a lot of money.
Yeah, so
compared to the rest of his stuff.
So he signed his DreamWorks contract in '97, and that led to all the money for this album.
Right.
It's on my lap. That's the only reason I know.
Yeah. And after Figure Eight, some sort of mental breakdown. A lot of heroin, a lot of meth, and for a few years there, that really comes out in his album that was released posthumously, From a Basement on a Hill. And he cleaned up. By the time he had died, he had been clean for like 6 months in 2003, and he was in his apartment with his girlfriend, and apparently they were in an argument. This is her story. They were in an argument, and she didn't want to argue anymore, so she went and took a shower. And while she was in the shower, she locked herself in there. When she was in the shower, she heard a scream come from out of the bedroom, wherever it was, and she ran out, and Eliott had stabbed himself in the chest 2 or 3 times. It was more than once, so like it's already crazy that you're saying that he stabbed himself in the chest, but it was 2 or 3 times. So she called the police and got scared and pulled out the knife out of his chest. And it has been ruled what is it, inconclusive, whatever they call it. They don't know if it's a homicide or a suicide. And the reason I bring up the drugs is that they did a drug screening on him during his autopsy, and the only thing that was found in his body were his legally prescribed doses of antidepressants. There were no drugs in his system. So he's like the underground Kurt Cobain. The dude was murdered, but it's still inconclusive as far as the legal proceedings are concerned.
It's another one of those weird ones, another rock star, and it doesn't make any sense. It's
makes no sense.
Yeah, and the whole story is just incredibly weird. And this was one of the first things I read about when someone first introduced me to Eliott Smith. So when I first listened to this album, I was like, oh yeah, I do remember this. And I started doing a little more digging, and it just gets weirder and weirder.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
he was a weird dude. Dude.
The darkness definitely shows in a lot of his music. That's one of his kind of trademark things. So I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go on, speaking of which we probably should move on to the next song at some point. Track 2 is Somebody That I Used to Know. I gave this an 8.
I give it a 6.5.
I gave it a 6.5.
Gave it a 6.5.
Ooh, we're in agreement.
Damn. That's tough. That's an easy 9.5 for me. Somebody I Used to Know is the song that introduced me to Eliott Smith. Yeah.
You know what? That's
dude,
fair.
the guitar the guitar arrangement is fucking insane, and the way that he just weaves those words together, like if you look up all of the lyrics that this man smashes into 2 minutes, it's so concise and so Eliott Smith. Like it's just distilled Eliott Smith. I remember one time when I don't even remember when I was first introduced to Eliott Smith, well over a decade ago. I was sitting around with my acoustic guitar, and I was like, well, let's see if I can play Somebody That I Used to Know. And then I looked up a tab, and I was like, fuck that. I'm never going to play Somebody That I Used to Know, but I'll enjoy it and listen to it. Yeah. So why the 6.5?
I can defend mine. I think this purely is just a matter of the way that we rate these dang things. This just threw me so far into left field after the last song. I was like, god damn.
Fair,
We
yeah, as
have
far
like
as-
this
yeah.
beautiful piece. This is a heartfelt like. And then we had more of like a funky like groove going the last time, and so it was just like it threw me there. And then I don't know, I just couldn't like latch onto it for a second because it was like taking a second to grasp. I was like, all right, when's it gonna kick in? Shit, it's not.
For me, I had something that was a little off-putting throughout the entire song. This is my first time listening to this artist, and for whatever reason, in this song in particular, I thought his voice sounded weird. I couldn't shake the feeling the whole time, and then I was the whole time I'm like, nope, can't do it. I can't latch
That's
on.
fair.
It's not.
That's valid.
You know, it's not a bad song by any means, but I just think there's a little bit. I think there's not enough variety in the actual like vocal sounds going on, and it's causing like a weird drawback.
So I will say Eliott Smith it reminds me a lot of like this one particular thing about Radiohead. The first time you listen to Radiohead, you're like, this is okay, but it's weird. And then every time you continue to listen to Radiohead, it gets better and better. And that's Eliott Smith. Like it's more of a multi-listen thing. So by doing only one listen, we kind of screwed it up a little bit for you, especially if this is your first time.
Yeah,
See, this was my first time, but I had a good time, and I'm going to listen to more.
well, my ratings later on and directly after this get much higher. I swear.
No, yeah, it definitely.
No, I mean, dude, if you guys hate the album, I mean, you know, hate the album. but it's only my happiness, which we'll get to at song 12.
It
Yeah,
is weird. Mine definitely is like a roller coaster. It's like up and down, and every like couple of songs there's one where I'm like, I don't know why, but this one just isn't as high as the ones around it.
I'm sure we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, this album definitely is a roller coaster, but there's so
Yeah.
many different things going on. There's just every track is so different. It's kind of a fun.
Yeah, I do
ride.
think the way I'll justify the 6.5 is the pacing score. Pacing score gets tanked.
I could,
with these
yeah,
two.
I
The
can
first one
see
into
that
this,
big time.
it threw me bad, and
It's in a bad spot too
Mhm.
because it's like you go Son of Sam and Junk Bond Trader. Both of those have like a pretty they're pretty high energy, right? And a lot's going on, and like they're more catchy. And then for whatever reason, in between them is somebody I used to know. I don't like Everything Reminds Me of Her. I don't care about that song, but it would have fit better if it was near that versus in between these two.
Yeah, I think it took me till about halfway through this thing to get over the fact that it ping pongs a lot.
Yeah.
But the last couple songs have some pretty high scores, so
I don't know. I didn't hate this song. I gave it an 8.
I don't
it was
think
the only one.
I don't think there's any on this album that I hated.
Oh no,
just-
this was
yeah.
a good overall album.
So,
Despite what Zach says.
we talked about the guitar a minute ago. I was looking it up to see he played all of it. There's not another.
Yep.
There's not anyone else credited on the album, which that makes it even more incredible. The fact that he wrote all this stuff and played those guitar parts.
He was a savant. The dude was insane. Like classic rock star, the drugs, being a savant as far as just touching an instrument. I don't know how he did it.
The drugs.
Oh, I hit the wrong button.
I mean, it's,
I'm sure it's just practice.
That 80s coke made you better, I swear. This new stuff.
Yeah, but
sucks.
I don't think reading all the drugs Eliott did, like he never did a happy drug. It was like meth and heroin, which
Yeah.
Did the fuck you up shit.
That's what I mean. Like, I mean, I guess it fits the music. Fuck, it's sad.
Good to know his music's good to rob a gas station too.
Yeah, dude, you're smashing some gas station boner pills and just
Man,
throwing
even his
some Eliott
drugs were
Smith.
sad. That sucks.
God.
Are we ready to move on to
Junk
next one?
Bond Trader. Yeah, it's track number 3. What was I gonna say? Oh, number. I gave this an 8.5.
I also gave this an 8.5.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 7.5.
Okay. Junk Bond Trader, I love the harpsichord that it starts with. I think that's what that is. Whatever that is he's playing on the piano. I'd give Junk Bond Trader an 8.5.
Yeah, most of mine comes from a funny experience I had with this song. So that part in the beginning, it actually relaxed me so much while I was listening to it. I fell asleep, and I listened to most of the album asleep. And I had to
Nice.
go back and re-listen to this. And it had this weird calming familiarity to it, even though I haven't heard this artist before. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that arrangement's really, really interesting, and a lot of that happened. Like that happens a lot on this album. His arrangements are just. I mean, like I'm not as well versed in music theory, so I don't know quite how it stretches the bounds of music theory, but it's certainly different, and it's cool. It's cool. L.A. does a good job of it. Junk Bond Trader does a good job of it.
He plays some pretty complex harmony for someone that is kind of on the folk rock side. You know, a genre you're used to hearing 3, maybe 4 chords most of the time. He definitely gets out there and has some fun with the stuff. So it's, you know, not sitting and looking at chord charts. It's pretty complex.
Yeah, and I think those songs where he does that are getting the highest scores from me. Definitely. I know L.A. 100% is, I think, my top song. So.
I mean, that makes sense. I can tell you directly why the songs I liked. They all have drums. I'm just
Yeah.
And it's
It's
funny.
We'll talk about LA when we get to it. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No,
That
I just think I'm a drummer, and I apparently just on this album for once I was like, no, this song didn't have drums. I'm usually pretty conscious of it, but on this one it really bugged me for some reason. I don't know. The other thing I noted, this song had a really seamless transition from the last one. Like it does on a lot of this album, the way it flows and crossfades and all that. You don't see that as much anymore, but it was a really seamless transition between the two.
Yeah, and I would disagree. I'm not sure who it was that said that, like, you know, we recorded this in 3 years and we can make it an album. I think it deserves to be an album. I think there was thought put into it, definitely, but I don't necessarily agree with. I agree more with you guys where it's like on one hand I don't think it was thrown together, but at the same time I feel like the pacing definitely could have been laid out differently to make it more palatable. Because yeah, I mean there are points where it can get tough. And like right after this, like we're going Junk Bond Trader. It's very up. It's very fun and in your face and complex. And then we get Everything Reminds Me of Her. Like, come on.
Yeah, I think with Junk Bond Trader, I just got like sensory overload at one point. It just completely there was so much going on vocally. There was like 2-3 different layers going on and different effects on all of them. I say that like there wasn't probably like 26 different tracks with 50,000 different effects on them. But yeah, there was just a lot. It got overpowering. But it wasn't bad. It just kind of threw me back, and I was like, oh, I'm actually listening now. Like it locked me in. It made me listen. It made me focus.
So his music is very chaotic at times in general. Like it's very much, if there was like a chaotic depressing, that's how I would describe. And it's just he's just a dark dude, but I mean it's all very chaotic, and I think that's part of what makes it fun. But I understand it's a lot sometimes. I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah. These there, I guess there's definitely blips of it on Figure 8 where he touches on that chaos, but I think the album after this, From a Basement on the Hill, that's where that chaos. Like, dude, there are some songs that, like, again, not being, not huge into music theory, but these songs just sound strung out. Like the song did heroin. I don't know how his arrangements are so weird and really, I mean, they work. I love him. I mean, he's my favorite songwriter of all time, but man, yeah, I don't know how he pulls this kind of stuff off.
That was the other thing I was going to say too. That's really important. All of these songs may sound familiar to you because the artist that you like probably like Eliott Smith.
Probably.
He's one of those guys that this is such an important, influential album that even not hearing it before, it probably made sense.
Yeah, I definitely got that in this song in particular.
I have one later that I was like, I know I've heard this song before, and I don't think I have, but it's probably something that sounds, or it took a ton of inspiration from it.
Oh, for sure.
All right.
Well, shall we move on to the Black Sheep, gentlemen?
Yeah, we'll move on. Track 4, Everything Reminds Me of Her. I gave it a 7. I didn't hate it.
So I think I have my track listings wrong here. I have Everything Means Nothing to Me at track number 4. Is that track number 5?
That is track number 5.
Okay.
That's 5, yeah.
So I gave track number 4 a 6.5 out of 10.
Also gave it a 6.5 out of 10.
Also gave it a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay, so we agree in.
Nice. So I just have some of these going on, like I have a mixer board, and I'm just lowly playing Everything Reminds Me of Her to be like, do I really just, because I never go back to it, right? Like I go back to Figure 8 all the time. I never specifically pick Everything Reminds Me of Her unless it just pops on and I don't change it. I think Everything Reminds Me of Her is not a bad song, but you have to be in a particular place to enjoy it mentally. I'd give Everything Reminds Me of Her a 6, but if you're in that frame of mind or in that place in your life where you need this song, it's really, really good.
I don't know. I think for me it rated a little higher than I probably would think if I pulled it out separately, just because this was like the first song that I was like, oh, that's what I was expecting. A little more from this album. This is what reminded me of the other stuff of his I've heard. Having never done a deep dive. So I think that's why it did what it did, and it's got some really beautiful instrumentation. And I also noted I thought it was really cool that the flow changed up so much between the two songs without it being distracting. Like, that's a really cool compliment.
Oh, I got so distracted. I was like, we went from full band back down to like not full band. I was like, dang.
I think pretty much the transition from almost every song until LA distracted me.
Yeah,
I can definitely agree with you there. I said this one put me to bed again, but in the bad way. It just kind of bored me a little bit, and not that it's a bad song by any means. I still almost gave it a 7. It wasn't really my cup of tea.
I think we're all not depressed enough. We're all we're angry, not depressed.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, dude. Like if you just had your heart. I know for a fact because I've been that guy who just had his heart shattered. And it's like, and you're just alone and you want to be alone and just feel, and you turn on this song, you're gonna feel. But driving to work on a Tuesday, Everything Reminds Me of Her, probably not.
Yeah.
But I do agree that it definitely has that vibe. This and Everything Means Nothing to Me are more like EXO and his older stuff. Like classic Eliott.
Well, speaking of, I think it's probably a pretty good transition to go on. Everyone.
Yep.
Okay. So Everything Means Nothing to Me is next track. It's track 5. I gave this one a 9.
I gave this one an 8.
I gave this one an 8.
I gave this one an 8. Damn, we're all sharing one
What
fucking
the hell?
brain cell. Look,
You guys are dead on with each other. I'd give it an 8. It's a great song. I love Everything Means Nothing to Me.
I can tell you exactly what gave it the extra point for me above you guys. The drums. The huge, just affected, smashed, just drums of doom. I loved it in this track.
It was really cool.
I thought you were going to take points away for the drums because they were like just slightly off.
Yeah, so it's on purpose though.
Mm-hmm.
It's an artistic choice. Like, I won't say it was bad. You know, there's a lot of bands that have drummers that can't play in time, but if you play not in time on purpose, it's fine, I guess.
This song's got a lot of weird stuff going on in it. And
It does.
I
Even
like
the
all
vocal
of it.
melody's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did say that in here I'm not the biggest fan of like the vocal effect, but what he's using it for is really cool.
Also, that vocal control, absolutely
Oh my God.
insane. Would be a bitch live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's weird watching interviews with Elliott Smith, and then you listen to his music, and he's always had like somebody described it. I forget who it was, but it just nailed it. It's like this whispery spider-like delivery with his singing, and it's just something. I could never sing like it, and I don't listen to any artist that even comes close to that very distinct delivery that he was known for.
Yeah, I think he might be one of the first ones I can think of that used that kind of almost like whisper singing that's so big right now. I won't say that he's doing the same thing. He had a lot better technique and incredible falsetto control. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff going on in his vocals that are just absurd. But as far as I know, at least this is the oldest stuff that I've been exposed to that has that kind of thing going. Don't know. Could be wrong.
For whatever reason, it looks like your mic doesn't have the second screw.
It has both of them.
Oh.
It does look like that.
Yeah, it just looks super broken.
It's just floating here.
It's telling you to fix your shit. Yeah. What isn't great about this song? Piano's going hard. It itches my brain in all the right ways.
This is the first spicy song for me too, with all that stuff. So I was like, oh, it's spicy finally. Like I wanted something spicy. I don't know why. I specifically wrote that in the notes though, that I wanted something spicy.
I think I just knew we were coming back into something that wasn't acoustic, and this just really swung in, and I was like, oh, hell yeah. This is what's up.
Yeah.
Cool. We ready to...
Well, shall we go to the Golden Bird?
Yep. That's exactly what we'll do. We'll go to LA, track 6. I gave this an 8.5.
7.
I give it a 9.
8?
9.5.
Do I have to defend my 7 real quick?
I think so, yeah.
Is it crazy to say that this one did nothing for me? Like,
A little bit.
it just...
Really?
It was here.
We know how he feels
And-
about Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah, she doesn't do anything for me either. It was just kind of here for me. And it's not really a bad thing. It was nice to listen to, but I couldn't pick one particular part that really stuck out to me in particular.
The energy.
The
Yeah, the energy's high.
yeah.
the very Beatles-inspired track. If you like the Beatles, you'll like this one.
I
It was
don't
pretty
really-
obvious.
I was gonna say the Beatles show up the most, I think, for me on Son of Sam in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I wrote that it has this almost Tom Petty vibe too. I don't know if it's just like the guitar melody or what, but for some reason this came on and I was like, oh, this is kind of like some of the more experimental Tom Petty stuff. I thought that was a cool thing.
It's also got a fun-ass drum, like, just beating outro. That's always fun as hell.
Well, speaking of,
Go
ahead.
I love the guitar lick in this song and the way that like at the end of the guitar lick and then the drums just crash in together and he goes right back into the verse. It's like it scratches just a little itch for me.
I really like the implied modulation there at the end too. Like harmonically, it gets pretty wild. There at the end. No one cares. Sorry.
I thought I was cool. I was nodding my head, and then I remembered how silent nodding is.
We're
It looks like he just crashed and burned, but I was just like, yeah, you're right.
it's funny. That's all I wrote. Yeah, he already mentioned the guitar part being awesome.
The guitar part did fuck.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I was actually kind of surprised to see that he was the only one that played guitar on this. Not only because of the difficulty of playing those parts, but the fact that those parts came out of your brain. To be able to think of the composite is just that's absurd. Cool. We can go on to the next track if you guys want. As much as I really don't want to.
Really? I love In the Lost and Found.
Yeah. So in the Lost and Found and the Roost were put together here. It's also listed as Honky Bach. So I gave this one a 6.
I gave this one a 6.5.
Gave this one a 6.
I gave this one a 7.5.
I'd give it an 8.
And get mine out of the way real quick.
Oh, thumbs up.
Tragic.
I got nothing.
I'm just surprised you're letting it rip this early.
That's true.
I almost let it go earlier.
Damn.
I almost let it go like number 2.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk about the part that me and Carl don't like. That piano is egregious. I don't like it.
I was gonna say, if you love it, how do you feel about Rocky Raccoon by the Beatles? Do you like that piano?
Me? Yeah, I do.
So that would make sense. That's what it reminded me of. It immediately made me think of it.
Why? That song is not coming to my brain right now.
The one.
Yeah, I feel like the thing for In the Lost and Found that, like what I was saying, that Figure 8 is not a happy album, but it has happier tracks. It's the perfect break right there at song 7 to be like weird, different. Like it is different from everything else on the album.
You know, I kind of thought that at first, and then like in the middle, it started feeling like it was sarcastically happy. and that made it depressing in a different way. I don't know. I guess
I'm sure it is.
You know, that was just the vibe that I got, and I started to write that, and I was like, no, he's being sarcastic. Like he's 100% smacking us in the face with this because it is like overly happy for where it is in the album.
Yeah. Yep, and that's stupid. See that if you dislike that, totally valid. I love that. I can see how the piano is very in your face. I can see how that could be grating. I don't know. It's never bothered me.
Really, I
like it.
There's electronic keys and shit going nuts. I was loving every second of it. The juxtaposition between the like super sad like lyrics and then the super bright like mix and sounds, I loved it. I thought it was great. That's kind of my like bread and butter. That's what I like to do. It's like if you can just say depressing shit and then everyone's not paying attention to that. It's what Outkast did. He got a whole song about it. It's called Hey Ya. Go listen to it.
Yep. All right, fellas, next song.
Yeah, I was like, man, I keep thinking everybody's going to keep talking. That's on me. This one is track 8, Stupidity Tries. This one scored really high for me, 9.25.
I give this one a 7.
8.5.
8.
I'd give it a 9. I love Stupidity Tries.
This one was also just here for me. I think at this point in the album, I was starting to reach a little bit of a weird point where things were beginning to blend together just a little bit. In particular with like his voice, just because I haven't really gotten used to it yet. I think it's good. It just starts to feel a little weird at this point for me. And this one kind of blended in with some of the rest of the stuff way too much. And I was like, yeah, it's good. But if I were listening to this maybe by itself, I think it would be better.
Okay.
I feel that about a lot of the tracks on this album. That there's a lot of them that pulled out of like the context, it feels different. Which is this song I wrote down. It just has an incredible vibe. You know, the whole thing just has this feel that's awesome. And I don't know, maybe this is the only like high point in the album for him because it just feels more relaxed. Everything felt better about this track, and I guess it's because he's just kind of over it and shrugs and has that moment of bliss after being over whatever the problem was in the lyrics. And it, you know, all the emotion comes through his voice so well that I kind of got that through the track.
I think this was the point in the album where I understood what my beef with some of the songs was and wasn't with others. I was like, okay, some of these songs have the energy. I like all of it, but I think this is the song that made me understand why some of them were as much higher than the others.
Yeah.
How so? How did that, like, I'm just curious.
I just think that was one of, because I know it's mostly the energy in the tracks that I liked, like with LA and this one.
Yeah.
And I think this is just where that clicked, that's why that's happening to me, because I couldn't figure out why I was scoring some of them as low as I was.
Right.
And I think this is the point where I was like, all right, I get it. That's why.
Okay.
Yeah. As mentioned, guitar was very bright, very trebly and fun, and I enjoyed it. It's how I set my guitar typically most times. I like that very bright sound. The chord progressions here were very notable and fun, and kind of didn't exactly go the way you thought they were going to, but ended where you thought they would, and that's the right way to do it. The dissonance in this song was just immeasurable, and it was very fun. I loved it. It made me feel like I was in the right headspace of this song, which was just kind of confused. I was like, am I happy? Am I sad? No, I'm here. And that's just life.
I feel like this is, like, Stupidity Tries is a good example of, like, damn near the happiest you're going to get Eliott Smith, which is, like, melancholy. You know what I mean? Where it's just, like, acceptance of his circumstances or getting over it or whatever. Just, like, Stupidity Tries for me is I think one of you mentioned it earlier, it's the most relaxed track on the album. The vibe is good. It's not happy. But it's certainly not like everything reminds me of her. You know what I mean? It's melancholy in a fun, energized way, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that nailed it, because the other thing I wrote is it reminded me a lot of the Britpop that is one of my guilty pleasures. You know, a lot of that stuff, and that's exactly like all of it has this kind of melancholy sense of humor. That's part of the thing with a lot of those tracks. So it probably carried that energy, not just the orchestration kind of stuff that reminded me of it. That makes sense. All right, we ready to move on? Track 9 was Easy Way Out. I gave this one a 7.
I give this one 8.5.
Gave this one a 7.
7.5.
8.5. Easy Way Out.
Yeah, this one's beautiful for me. I love the melody here. I think the lyrical content is also just crazy. And that guitar, it's so sick.
This is definitely one of them that I feel like is probably a slow burn, and I need to go back and listen to again, because there's so many things going on at certain points in this album that when I got to this one, I was like, okay, it's a sweet song. You know, it's a nice, sweet little song, and it was in, you know, some sort of 6/8, 12/8 meter. Gave me that kind of feel, and it was nice change up, but other than being pretty, it didn't catch me for anything. And I think that's just because there's so much chaos going on around it.
I think I'm in the same boat, but also during this song, I was reading, looking for reviews of this album. So I was just wondering what other people thought of it. And I read the Pitchfork review, and it might be the most brutal review of anything I've ever read in my life. And then the score didn't reflect it at all. It was like a 6.9, and they're saying some of the worst things I've ever heard said about another like piece of media.
They probably got death threats.
I'm sure.
Really?
Yeah, it was
What?
wild.
Really?
I didn't write in any quotes, but I would go just look through it for a second, because it's wild what they were saying.
He's definitely an artist that you either do like or don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people see the importance, but I definitely know people that do not like Eliott Smith.
The review felt like Steven's review on here with the Dropkick Murphys, where he was saying the worst things ever, and then he'd be like, "That's a 7." But I hate it. I want it to die right now. It's pretty good.
It's passing grade. It's the worst thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
high school
I think Easy Way Out for me is the one that harps back to classic Eliott. Definitely more polished, but definitely harps back to that classic Eliott Smith. And honestly, this one kind of shares Everything Reminds Me of Her, in that like it's more accessible than Everything Reminds Me of Her, but still kind of gotta be in a certain place to really get the most out of it, I feel.
Yeah, that is kind of there's a lot of Eliott Smith that's very deep as well as being dark. There's definitely some good crying tunes on here.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, if we're ready, everyone, cool. Track 10, Wouldn't Mama Be Proud? I gave this one an 8.
I give this one a 7.
7.5.
6.5.
Really? Oh, I'm gonna go an 8.
Here, watch. I'll get this one out of the way too. Boom. Thumbs up plus. This one just, it was really one that just was there, and I think it was like my burnout came and went with this song. Luckily.
I agree with you. Most of my 7 is that this one is blending really bad. I feel like this one also has that problem where if you pulled it out of the album, listened to it on its own, it'd probably be better. But it's got a good vibe. It'd be a good playlist song. So, 7.
Yeah, like Wouldn't Mama Be Proud is one of the few songs on this album that, like, if it's a nice summer day, I'll roll down the windows and blast Wouldn't Mama Be Proud. Like, driving down the highway to this vibe, the drums, the guitars, it's it's the feel good, as far as Eliott Smith can be feel good. But it's a great driving song. I picked this one out on its own, so I agree with you. I guess in the context of the full album, I could see that as well.
I mean, I definitely noticed the forward energy. That's what I wrote, why it scored a little higher than what's around it, just because it kind of picked up. It felt better. The drum tone in this track is awesome, but everything just seemed to start moving forward again. And I bet that makes it an awesome driving song. That makes total sense.
Yeah. I love the energy of this song, but this is the one where I swore that I've heard it before, even though I've definitely not listened to this album before today. But it sounds like so many, I think, things that I've heard, but I can't place any of it. It just sounds so familiar to me.
I made a comment when we were setting up that he's in a bunch of movies, and I looked it up. It's not movies; it's TV shows. He's
Really?
in a ton of TV shows. There was a lot of his stuff was listed in different TV episodes, and that must be where I first heard it. He's in quite a few movies too, especially Good Will Hunting. We talked about that before as well. But
Yeah, he's all over that movie. I think the director or somebody or Ben Affleck or one of them just loved Eliott Smith. And then that brought him, he wrote Miss Misery, which I think if there is an extended cut of Figure 8, Miss Misery is included on that. And he was cut. Is it the oh god, I get them mixed up. It was the Oscars. The Oscars are for the movies, right?
Correct.
Right. He played a cut down version because, of course, it was the Oscars. He couldn't play the full song, but he played Miss Misery at the Oscars. Lost to, of course, My Heart Will Go On. Like if you watch them doing the who won the best song. Eliott Smith was nominated, and they laugh as they open the envelope because they knew it was going to be My Heart Will Go On, but he still performed, and he said it was like being on the moon. He's like, it was really cool to see the moon, and I never want to go back.
All right, I did just look it up. It looks like it's not on the deluxe version of this album.
Oh, it isn't? Huh. Maybe it's just its own thing. It might just be its own thing. It's called Miss Misery.
It's on XO.
Great. Was it that old? I guess Good Will Hunting did come out in like 97.
97, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Oh, it's on XO Deluxe. That's what it is.
I knew it was on a deluxe release. It's not, yeah.
It's 23 on XO Deluxe, which 23 song deluxe albums is crazy.
That's what the deluxe for this was, yeah.
Yep. I thought it was 24.
Is it
It's
24?
23.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So I was just thinking about how crazy it must have been that like good movies used to come out, like Good Will Hunting and Titanic, and people actually used to try when they wrote scripts. But I feel like that's a different podcast.
What, you mean you don't like Borderlands? Come on.
Yeah.
If streaming services have better movies than the theaters, we have a problem.
Yeah, Good Will Hunting, the Eliott Smithness brought me to it. And I was like, wow, there's a movie with like 6 Eliott Smith songs. Let's check it out. Adore that movie. It's actually a really, really good movie.
Yeah.
And I know that the scene where like it's not your fault gets memed on all the time, but like within the context of the movie and seeing Robin Williams play a serious character, it's a tearjerker, man.
Breaks your heart every time. Every time.
Yeah, like it's tough.
Gosh, I love that movie. I love Matt Damon.
I was gonna say it's so weird to watch Matt Damon in this versus everything else. That's
Right?
the other thing is Matt Damon isn't playing Matt Damon in this movie, and that's what makes it so weird.
Because it's his movie.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's
Him
not
and Ben Affleck wrote it.
it's not as weird as when you see like if you saw like Jack Black do a serious acting role, right? Like it doesn't feel that foreign, but like it does feel weird.
A little bit. I think it's too because he's so young, and it's like you'd expect this like that level out of someone like a veteran like him now, but then he put on this like amazing dramatic performance back then. All of them did, and it's like I don't think it was ever quite captured out of any of them again, like that serious of a role.
They peaked.
They did peak.
Yeah, it was Robin Williams' portrayal was just, I mean, like growing up, I'd always seen Robin Williams was the funny man, and then you see him in Good Will Hunting, and he just absolutely crushes his role as, I mean, a psychology professor. He wasn't even a psychologist. He just was doing this as a favor for a friend who he didn't even really like. Really, 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 really good.
That's what it reminds me of. I was trying to think of the other movie it always reminds me of. It's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yep.
Jim Carrey in that movie is such different than Jim Carrey ever is.
Little Miss Sunshine.
Yep.
Steve Carell.
Yep.
Yep.
Or what's the one with Adam Sandler? Punch Drunk Love. That's the one
Yeah.
where he's not Adam Sandler. And there's a lot of those movies that are just once you get over they're not playing the character you expect them to. They're phenomenal. That was the point.
Yeah, dude, when I first saw Little Miss Sunshine, I was blown away. I was like, Steve Carell has the chops like that. It was nuts. That man broke my heart. I'm like, the guy from The Office just shattered me into pieces like that. Wow.
Yeah, Mr. Never needs to act again because he owns the Minions. That's what he's like. What a bonkers. It's just bonkers.
Not the little yellow fuckers.
Yeah, he's either producer or he owns a big part of all the
I
Minions.
think
and,
he's a producer. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. He's an executive producer. He's got the E in front of it.
Ooh. That just means he puts a lot of money.
I was gonna say that just means he spends $1.5 million per movie.
That's all that means.
All right, we ready to move on?
I don't know.
I'm
I'm
gonna say we kind of lost the plot.
Hey, that was a good one.
Fuck the
that was a
plot,
good-
bro. That was a better plot.
Album Movie Club's not a bad
That was
idea.
good.
People need to know what good movies are. They're hard to find.
People need to know that in our spare time, which there's very little of, we spend it watching movies.
Yeah, we critique the music in movies as we're watching. That's 100% what happens. No, so track 11 is Color Bars. I gave this one a 7.
You give this one a 6.
Get this one an 8.
I gave this a 6.75.
I'd give Color Bars 8.5, 8.75. It's bordering on a 9, but not quite there. I love Color Bars.
So mine's easy. That's it.
I definitely understand why. Yeah, because it slowed back down. This is another one that, like, as much as I like the way this album is a roller coaster, the pullback.
Wrong spot.
It was just like, after especially the Forward Energy song before it that I like so much, it just made this one drag on.
I think
Yeah, I can see that.
Is that a train horn or a dragon that I just
Right?
fucking
What
heard?
the fuck was
That
that?
was wild.
I thought it came through the headphones, but it may not have.
Oh,
there's no
I
way.
tried to mute my headphones and cough. If something weird came through the headphones.
That may have been.
No, that was definitely outside.
Oh.
There's no way the mic's caught it either, so.
Oh shit. Well, now I just look insane. But yeah, back to this. It had a piano and a shaker going nuts together. That was fun. The cadence on this one, there was a fun cadence, and the intro was very fun, but it pulled back so much. I was ready to go because we're on 11 of 16. I'm still expecting at least 2 energy,
Yeah.
and then it pulled back. I was like, ah, damn it.
I think by this point I'd fully accepted the roller coaster. Just strapped in. I like the piano. I like the shaker. It's a good song.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I really love Color Bars. I guess it's tough, right? Because you guys are listening to it for the first time. I've been listening to Figure Eight for ever. I don't know. But man, I can't think of the last time. It's probably been a year or so that I've sat down and listened to this album front to back, and I guess I don't consider the flow of it because it's so familiar, right? But now, like, listening to you guys and taking off more or less rose-tinted glasses, because I've always loved this album. It totally makes sense. Yeah, Wouldn't Mama Be Proud and Color Bars, it's like Wouldn't Mama Be Proud is literally a driving song, and then you drive straight into a fucking wall and you have Color Bars.
Yeah, it's a little weird back to back.
Yeah, great song, but I could totally see where you guys are coming from. Definitely.
I don't know, we talked about, this wasn't on we were talking before we got started about how the album isn't long, but it feels long. And I think that's just the overall darkness. And I think when it came back for this song, it slowed down, and I kind of got that darker vibe again. I was like, oh crap. This was when it really hit me that the album felt long, even though it's not.
It's weird.
Yeah.
I no longer, because of Album Book Club, I no longer judge the length of album. It's like through time. It's
Yep.
track list, because I know that this is going to be longer because we have more songs to talk about.
I will talk about, like, it was really cool to listen to this, because Eliott Smith I had definitely heard of before, but it wasn't something that was really on my radar. It doesn't connect to a lot of other things that I like, even though it does. I mean, it's kind of, but he's one of those artists that's like one to the left of an artist that I like. So you know, even though I knew this existed, even though I've definitely listened to him before, I had never thought to listen to the whole album. So we do a lot of different stuff on Album Book Club, but this was one I actually enjoyed because I was like, oh, I know that. But then I was like, oh, I don't know that.
The implication that Carl just hates all of the shit we do.
I don't hate all of it.
Well,
Most of it.
We get some we get some shit on here, man. But
I hope
we
you
get
guys
some heat.
overall enjoyed this album.
Oh yeah, for the most part,
Definitely, yeah.
this was all good. This is definitely one that's like, if I were to listen to this album again in its entirety, I'm not going to be upset by that. I'm not going to pay attention and analyze it. I'm going to have fun with it.
Right.
Take off the job, but
Yeah, I just hope you guys weren't asking for an album recommendation. I just served you guys slop. I haven't heard anything below a 6 yet, so that's pretty cool.
No, and I don't think any of us hated this album. You know, what's funny is this definitely taught me that I am gonna get on YouTube and listen to Eliott Smith mix sometimes. You know, it's more like that. I'm not gonna turn the album on, but I definitely am gonna listen to more Eliott Smith. And I thought that was a cool takeaway.
He's always been, for me, it's like I guess an influence nobody ever thinks about, right? Because like he was popular-ish, right? Like he is an influence, like you said, to the left. Like he's always kind of, unless you pay attention to him, you're not gonna notice him. You're not gonna think about, you know, just his whole career was like illustrious-ish. He was big-ish. Like he was never this huge rock star, I guess, and he lived that way. He was very much like a savant musician, crazy, you know, problem-ridden man. I don't know. I guess Eliott Smith he's a big influence, but still retains that sense of underground where. Yeah, I mean he has 1.2 million listeners or whatever, but like, it just doesn't. I don't know. I'm trying to convey the point that he still has that. I guess that underground. Maybe I'm wrong.
No,
but
I think that's part of like the draw for a lot of people to Eliott Smith is even though it's popular enough that most people, especially most people that grew up in this era, would know the name. You know, they know the movies it's in. They know it's familiar, but it's not. Like you haven't heard it a million times, and even though a bunch of people, he's an influence to a ton of musicians, very influential, but it's not something you think of all the time, and I think that's part of the draw.
well, I think also he made it to the level that to me is the most ideal, which is you're the musician's band,
Right.
so. To most people, this is probably nonsense. Like, I mean, most of what Album Book Club says is nonsense, and we're making sense of this album, and that's scary. So, I think this is definitely an album made by a musician for musicians. So, it's like, if you reach that level of fame, it's like the perfect tier.
I don't know if it's necessarily for musicians. I just think it takes thought when you
That's
listen.
true. It's easier.
It's
for
a little more
musicians to get.
abstract than what, like, it's not as palatable as something that necessarily would have been on the radio, and especially not all the time.
It's an art piece.
It's definitely more artsy than what most people
it
could
scratches your ear for sure. Like when I know one of you said that like Junk Bond Trader at a point is like to the point of just overstimulation. The weird shit he does all the time.
Before we move on, I love artists around this type of artist because I always feel like the best stuff is always right under the crust. You know, I always talk about it getting too close to the sun and you burn out and become a pop artist. That's the crust. And then if you go right under that is all the musicians that were good enough to make it but never did, so they never sold out. I mean, I hate to say that, but there's a lot of artists that kind of maintained their artistic integrity in this area. But still, in this case of this album, he got a ton of money. This album has killer production. It has all that stuff. But, I mean, no offense, if you'd given this to a pop artist, they would have just been like, oh, cool, we recorded in Abbey Road. Wasn't that cool? You know,
right.
There wouldn't have been all the orchestration or all the
sentiment.
stuff. So this could only come out of someone that's in that kind of, like, tier. It's a really interesting album for that.
Someone who cares.
Cool. I guess we can move on to the next track if you guys want.
Yep.
I can keep rambling as long as you want, though. This is Happiness and the Gondola Man. I gave this one a 7.
I give this one a 6.
This one is 7.5.
I gave this one an 8.
I give Happiness like a 7.5.
Damn, how am I the high one here? Look,
I love Happiness, and like Happiness was when this album came out. Happiness was like it was the second single. I think it was Son of Sam and Happiness. And I guess I just never understood it. I like Happiness. It's a good song. And there's definitely like I will turn this song on its own, and there's a place for it. But like, never. I don't know. Maybe it's just. I don't necessarily call it bitterness, but like I'm like, Happiness was the single? Like really? Like
That's such
it's a good song, but like really? Like it's
For me, it just kind of sounds like everything else we've already heard. That's kind of where I'm coming from with the 6. At this point, I've kind of reached that little bit of burnout mode, and it definitely just made it sound like everything else I've heard on this album.
I love the story that Happiness tells. I love how raw, he makes these more serious, like why these people can't function together, like sort of relationship issue. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Happiness it's a good song, but I guess I could see the burnout. Yeah. Especially if this isn't for you or this is your first time.
Another one where it's better outside of the album. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And it's more of a problem I have with the structure of the album as a whole, and not this song in particular. I'm just not a huge fan of like really long, full 16 song length albums. A lot of times they feel a lot longer than they need to be.
Yeah.
I have it written on the next song, but this one has a 2. But it is a victim to the placement on the album. Was the big thing. It's a good song. I liked a lot of what it did, but it's gonna suffer because of where it is on a 16 track, or even if you're on the deluxe, a 23 track album.
I was actually thinking about that when we got about to this point. As I saw the deluxe, and I was like, as good as this is, I don't know. Like it'd have to be 2 separate listens. I'd have trouble. But anyway. As much as I hated the honky-tonk piano earlier, I love the organ on this one. I think that's how it scored as high as it did. I kind of agree about being a victim of where it is. All that stuff.
I think I ascended the placement that it just... I stopped what I was doing to listen to this song. You could feel it. You just feel it in your bones that you had to listen to this song. And the organ was going nuts. I loved it. It's very seldom that I actually like stop and just sit down and like appreciate something while I'm like doing something else. But like this was a case where I was like, I had to sit down like and just stop for a moment and then sit there for a second, pause afterward and be like, damn, all right, cool, and then roll forward.
See, I had to do the same thing, but it was because of burnout, not because I liked it so much.
It may have been burnout, but it seems to have worked in the favor of the song. So,
I did write another note for us that they put the interlude on the song instead of giving us a separate interlude afterwards.
Yep.
And that made me really happy. We at Album Book Club are interlude haters.
I still hate it. I still hate it.
Well, I mean, it serves its transitional purpose, but on this album, I didn't feel like any of them were too long. Yeah, I mean, maybe they were a little jarring, but none of them were too long, and it did its job here, I thought, pretty well. I'm just glad it wasn't a separate track.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay.
Cool. The next track is Pretty Mary Kay. I gave this one a 7.5.
I gave this one a 7.
I gave this one an 8.5.
6.5.
It's a good 8.5, 9 for me. I love Pretty Mary Kay.
I really like how it starts, and then when it gets into the sections where it has the stripped back vocal kind of swapping back and forth between the layered vocals, I think it sounds really cool. It creates a really cool effect on there.
But I can tell you why I gave it higher than the last points, last track. I loved the ride cymbal. You know, I come from this background of playing drums that are very ride cymbal driven, and it's the only percussion part for most, if not all, of this song, and it just fit perfectly. They did a really good job with the selection and the tonality, and they EQ'd it right. I mean, for such a minimum orchestration, they did a good job, which was cool.
Oh shit, my
I
turn.
mean,
Oh.
Pretty Mary Kay is just like another. I don't know. I mean, maybe it speaks, about myself that I turn this song on when it's a sunny day and I want to go on a walk. But like, Pretty Mary Kay, it's a good. Again, as far as Elliott Smith can go, the vibe is good, and I don't know. It's a good driving song, good walking, just, I guess, complements a decent day. I really like Pretty Mary Kay.
I actually have the same thing written down as that this immediately made the driving playlist. Loved the energy, loved the vibe this song brought. But I said in the last song, this one has it written that this one falls victim to placement.
This is also surprisingly his least played song on the album. Pretty Mary Kay, really? Huh.
I don't know, if you turn this album on and you get to this point, I feel like a lot of people like would skip maybe getting at this point in the album if they heard something that started like the last two songs, same organ, kind of same vibe. I think someone might. That may explain it. I don't know. I kind of agree with you. I think this was the gem out of the last few, at least.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the thing we've been saying like the whole time is that some of these songs are better off of the album, and I think this one is one of those.
Hell
Yeah.
no. They were hitting soap opera organ the whole time. Like they were hitting the squeal. Like they were about to reveal that my brother was my husband, was my cousin, was my neighbor, and I was so scared. And it just, I didn't love the intro, right? Which is already a bad start. If you're not like falling in love with the hook, you're in for a rough ride. And then I'm hearing the soap opera organ. I'm like, I'm not loving this. And then it just didn't change up enough for me. So I feel like it was just a whole bunch of factors that went into one thing of like, I was like, I just want more out of you right now.
Especially this far in.
Yeah, this far in, I expected crazier. I got kind of more basic. Not basic, but more basic than what I've heard.
For sure.
Yeah, it was funny. I think it was just that there was organ in 2 tracks in a row. But even though it sounded awesome in both tracks, I was kind of like, man, for something that's such a weird change in the whole rest of the album, it almost felt like these 2 songs went back to back where they should have, and I thought that was weird. In the whole thing, because we were so used to the way the rest of the album was, the fact that this song and the last song had a similar kind of sound was just weird to me. I don't know. But it changes completely for the next track, which is I Better Be Quiet Now.
Yep.
I literally cannot read my own handwriting. I gave this one an 8.5.
I also gave this one an 8.5.
Gave this one a 7.
Gave this one an 8.
8.5.
All right. I think the only reason I have it lower is because I didn't have much else to say. I really like the guitars on it, but that's kind of the only thing I had.
The thing that I have about this song, I think it sounds different, and that's what's great about it. Like, it doesn't blend with the rest of the stuff. I wish we had more of this style kind of sprinkled in throughout the rest of the album to help give a break, because this one provides that break without deriving too far from, I don't want to call it the formula because his music's so weird, but his sound, and also the guitar kind of carries here.
I think I started to get how the orchestration's tied to the lyrics on this track. I really liked that it felt like he was trying to pull inward, like into his own emotions, and the fact that now knowing that he played the guitar tracks, it's probably only him on this track. So that makes everything make way more sense, because it's like he's kind of almost in his inner thoughts. That was kind of the vibe I got from this track. And this was the point where I said, oh, all the orchestrations have been like the entire time. Like it's almost scored like a movie. I think that's part of why I thought immediately. I was like, oh, this sounds like a soundtrack, because it kind of has that vibe, or almost like a mix CD or something. Like every track really nails home the thing that it's going for, and I think I just got it when this track came on, so that's probably why it scored a little higher than the last few. But man, when the electric guitar comes in, it's just one of the most perfect moments on this album too. That was really cool.
Yeah, I think the guitar sounded great the entire time of this song. The vocal cadence was not my favorite. It goes back and forth with him where I'm like, man, his delivery is great on this song, and then it's just terrible on some. And this was just one where I was on the terrible side. But I will give this song props. It is exactly where it needs to be. Second to last is where this spot goes, or where this song goes. So,
Third to last.
Yeah.
third to last. Is it?
Yeah.
Yep, you're right.
No, it's fine. I understand how you feel that way.
a
It
good
definitely
lineup.
does set the stage for like the album closing out, but I do agree with like that. It's definitely more introspective. He's not telling a story.
There's the word I was looking for.
Which-
Thank you.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that about it. It feels, along with his delivery, it just feels like a really personal song, without being dragged down too much by like, I guess typical Eliott Smith depression. Like it's still bordering on melancholy, but it's very personal, almost cozy, I guess. Yeah, I love Better Be Quiet Now. Great song.
Cool. Yeah, we're ready. Our next track was my favorite track. It's Can't Make a Sound. I gave this one a 9.5.
I give this one a 7.5.
Gave this one a 9.
Give this one an 8.5.
I give Can't Make a Sound a 9.
I wrote down in all caps. It's like scribbled across like really big. It says, "Finally, they went full power." Like I felt like this was like the moment the whole album has been waiting for, and it's kind of funny because this album it definitely, going back to movies, it reminds me of a movie that you don't get until the very end. It's one of those long movies that you're watching and you have to think about the whole time, and at the very end you're like, oh, it all makes sense. This was that moment for me. It just kind of punched. I had the full everything, and that made me super happy.
So, the build-ups we get through this song are fucking awesome. I loved a lot of this song. My only issue is I do feel like it's kind of at the mercy of track length, or not track length, but the amount of tracks on this album, because it belongs here. This is a great choice of where it is within the context. It's hard for me to rate it any higher because when we get into those parts where it isn't as unique, I'm so burnt out with the sound that it detracts. And it really sucks because those build-up parts, they're so unique and they're so fucking awesome. It hits every single time. I wanted to rate it higher, but I feel like I can't.
I definitely
Fair.
can. Yeah, we've been talking about these songs sounding like soundtrack songs this whole time. This is the most soundtrack song on this entire album. Great guitar solo. I think the only thing that I'm going to say was a negative for me was the horn sounds at the end, which sounded like stock, like Logic MIDI trumpets.
Yeah, it's early digital, unfortunately.
I get it. I didn't take away for that. I
Yeah.
just wanted to point out that was there. Everything else
Not
about
a
the song
fan.
was great. Well, I have this problem that I've brought up multiple times where if I can identify the sound from Logic Pro, that I like it less because I've used it.
Yeah, no. I've definitely, yeah. What is it? God, there was. The first time I experienced that was in high school, and somebody was using Logic Pro on like Mac OS 10.4, and they recreated an entire Fort Minor song, and I'm like, wow. Like they just like did with the stock tools that were on the school computer, they made almost one-to-one of this Fort Minor song. I forget which one it was, but I totally get that feeling. If I know where that song's coming from, if I know the sample,
So, funny unrelated
it's just
story.
this part of me.
This reminded me very much of Blurred Lines. When you said that, I don't know if you know this or not, but Blurred Lines, the entire back of the track is a demo song on a keyboard. Like literally all of it, like the drum beat, the everything. I think they may have layered another drum beat on top of it, but all of the rest of the arrangement underneath it is just a demo song on a keyboard.
Jesus.
And I remember reading that when it came out, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" And I remember going into a Guitar Center and hitting the demo button and it coming on, and I was like, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard." I was like, "You literally got to be kidding me! How much money this guy just made for a song about this? That's literally just a demo song on a keyboard."
I mean, Clint Eastwood by the Gorillaz is the same thing. It's just a preset beat.
That's from at least it's from an interesting instrument though, because it's
Omnichord.
Omnichord.
Yeah. It's at least a real like instrument kind of thing. I mean, a keyboard is a real instrument, but a demo on a keyboard's a backing.
It's like an
track.
expensive piece of equipment, not $100 Casio keyboard.
That is
from
so
Walmart.
very true.
It's not like $100 keyboard. It's a nice keyboard, but still, it was just really funny when I realized that, and I didn't think of that about any of these samples because. Me talking about early digital, I always think of it like movies. You go back and you watch a lot of the movies from that era of early digital effects, and you're like, oh no. You're like, there's no way we thought this was cool. You know, I feel like that's the same stuff with this stuff. And the same thing happens in the 80s. Some of the late 80s where they first start going to like MIDI triggering and stuff, that stuff sounds goofy. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. That's one of the only points in this album, though, that you pointed out. It really made it sound like the era it's from. I think that's one of the
just
few
went back
identifiers.
and turned on the outro to Can't Make a Sound, and now, I totally hear what you guys are talking about for sure.
The problem.
I was just gonna say. I mean, I think my favorite thing about Can't Make a Sound is, like how it is every sound of the album on one song. You know what I mean? He has that slow, he has that low, and then he builds up. It's almost like he goes through the entire album as far as building is concerned. I don't think it goes quite as crazy as certain songs, but Can't Make a Sound touches on every sound that the album portrays, I feel. Like both light, medium, and full bore with the horns at the end.
Yeah, it's almost like an overture. I didn't even think of that. I didn't write it like that, but very much like an operatic overture kind of thing where it explains everything you saw, which is funny. I think this must have been like immediate when they were doing the track listing, because this is one of the few tracks on this album I feel like could only be where it is. This and the next track are the two that I'm like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. I think you could throw the rest of the album in a blender and not notice, but
these two, for sure.
These two are in the right spot, so that's cool. I made note of that when I was first listening. It's like, oh, the album's about to end.
Yep.
Speaking of the last song, are we ready?
Yeah.
Cool. Last song is Bye. I gave this a 6.
I also gave it a 6.
I gave it a 7.5.
I gave it a 7.
See, I get where you guys are coming from, especially now knowing that you guys hate interludes. I mean, I guess it's an outro. But I love Bye. I mean, I think honestly, like I could see someone thinking Bye is a little too long for what it is. I don't think it is. I think Bye is I'd give Bye an 8.5.
For me, it's actually on the contrary. I wish it was a little bit longer. I wish it was like a full song length. Part of my this is an intro is the fact that it's only a minute and a half and it's just a full instrumental. I think if they had a full 3-minute really beautiful instrumental at the end here, I would have rated it higher.
No, I definitely wrote that it felt like an interlude plus. I mean, it definitely had some of that vibe, but I don't know that that's the reason I gave it what I did. I think I liked the last song so much that this one got screwed. That happens all the time. We talk about on Album Book Club is if you love the energy and flow of a song, and especially an album like this where it's flip-flopping, I did write that this is a great ender. This is the perfect spot for this one, which we talked about a minute ago.
Yeah, there's no other place on this album that this song could have gone. That being said, I kind of wish it didn't. Although, I'm not mad that I now know this song. This song made it onto a playlist immediately, but I think it could have ended with the last song and been fine, but I did really like this song.
I feel like Bye for me is I don't know, if I'm walking home in the rain with my AirPods in, dude, and it's the sun's going down, Bye fits that vibe. There are a few songs on this album, Bye and Everything Reminds Me of Her. I forget what the other one I called out was. Very situationally based, and Bye can really like you said, on a playlist. Like it has to be a certain feeling. You have to be in a certain place. But Bye can definitely hit, and I think it's just really pretty. It's a nice little outro.
Yeah. My exact notes are: intro is beautiful. The whole thing is intro.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
You know, about 30 seconds in, I did look down to see if the song was ever going to change. I did look to see if like this was the intro to some big like "F you, we're done" kind of thing, because that's what I assumed. I assumed it was going to be a sarcastic ending, but it kind of just, I don't know. It felt like he just did all the stuff he did in the last song and then just got up and walked out.
Well, he does do that in some of his songs. I know you guys all love Honky Bach, but The Roost is its own song on the extended. The Gondola Man, I think, is a full song. I don't care for The Roost. That's why I don't think I've checked out the Gondola Man. But yeah, The Roost, that outro in for In the Lost and Found is its own song. I wouldn't be surprised if the Gondola Man is as well.
All right.
We'll move on. Make sure I do this in order. It's pacing, right? Okay. I was 90% sure this was first. So for this, I gave it a 9. I actually really liked it.
I gave it a 6.5.
Well, I'm gonna get.
Damn.
I gave the pacing a 5.
I gave it a 6.5.
I mean, it's gonna be a 10 for me. I love this album.
So I get why you guys gave it the scores you did, but I don't know. I think all of my favorite albums almost feel like a mix CD. So I think that's part of it. You know, I love the energy changes. I love all this, all that. The flow between tracks was really good. I mean, the actual mixing process where they actually go through and kind of make everything smooth was awesome on this album. Everywhere I could find, nothing stuck out, nothing hit any of that stuff. So usually that's a pretty high score for me. And the fact that they managed to do that with all the different stuff that was going on, I felt like that made it a really high score as far as pacing is concerned.
My big thing about it is we ping pong a lot, and also the actual track amount ends up hurting songs on the album, and that's a pretty bad thing in terms of pacing. Do I think the songs are great? Do I like listening to them? Yeah, they're awesome. They sound really good. Putting them all together in a big ass list, it can really burn somebody out. It can really hurt some of the later songs, like it did on mine. Like some of these later songs, I wish I could have just listened to them as their own separate thing and then rated them that way. But can't really do that when you're reviewing a whole album.
You know, it's funny.
Yeah, it's valid.
Halfway through this, I literally took a note and wrote that Carson's not gonna like how long this is. So
I don't.
I think
I think it's
funny.
ridiculous. I'm a dude that takes a point off a song every minute it is over 4.
Over 4 is crazy.
Well, it has to be really good to like keep pumping it up. Like if I can sit there and listen to a song that's 10 minutes long, shit, that song's great.
4 is like
4 is crazy.
on the low end of track length to me.
Yeah, I have a.
I think like average is 5.5.
I mean, okay, so I come from a jazz background, so it's not fair, but like a lot of my favorite albums are like 2 or 3 tracks on the side, like tops. Like 30 minutes is 2 or 3 songs. That's normal. So I don't know. We're very much the opposite there. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, but that's weird. I really like jazz, and I really loved playing jazz when I was there.
Also, Carson, I don't believe there is a song on this album that's over 4 minutes, or like over that hits 5 at least.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about the actual track time. I'm talking about the actual amount of tracks on here.
Yeah, I'm not. You gave a summary of essentially my speech I give for every album that's over 12. I'm not doing it again.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it the whole time. Pacing, I think, has been most of what we've talked about during this. So.
Well, yeah, because it's so hard to talk about the musical content without just glazing the dude. Because the actual musical content here is amazing. A lot of it works really well. It's when they've like kind of compiled it all together. Because I believe this is, you guys mentioned before, this is a compilation, right?
No,
Kind of vaguely.
he
not
definitely
really.
put all this together. This was. I mean,
It's just part of it was recorded in Abbey Road, so it's got like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the other half was part was recorded in L.A., part was recorded in Abbey Road, but it's what was I gonna say? He definitely put it together. I mean, it makes
It's
sense.
intentional, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense as an overall piece. I mean, we can talk about when we get to album overall. You know, there's definitely like, if you could cut 2 of the tracks off of this, I feel like the album could have got a 10 for me.
Oh yeah. That and move some stuff around. I do think the track order hurt the pacing the most.
I can agree with that. Yeah.
And we touched on it earlier. It's not that it's song length. It's not that it's track length. It's not its overall album length. We've rated stuff this length high before. It's the just general sadness of all of it. At a certain point, you know, there's a few songs that let you almost take a breath, but like if you're not ready, this is an album that will put you in a dark place, and that makes things feel longer. So that's some.
I've told my girlfriend before, like multiple times, like if you catch me listening to Eliott Smith for like more than 2 consecutive days in a row, if I say something like nothing's wrong, I'm lying. Like something's wrong. Something's really wrong. It takes a lot out of you, dude. Like it's great. I adore Eliott Smith in doses.
Yeah, I think all of my pacing issues come with, like, a lot of the happiest bits are smack dab in the middle. So you kind of get pulled out of this, like, suffering with half of the album. That's just track length to go. When I say suffering, I don't mean it's because the music's bad. I just mean
miserable, but it's funny because you gave everything a high score. That's why I'm laughing.
No, I liked this album. I just mean you're just so depressed with the guy. You can't help but like want to sit there and hold his fucking hand. It was like you get pulled out of that depression like halfway through a little bit. You're like, cool. We're like head above water almost. But then you just push right back down, and it feels like the tracks get longer on the second half of the album. But maybe it's just because I got happy and then sad immediately again.
Yep. Yeah, Eliott is I mean that goes through his whole discography. Like, you know, I don't know. Does he have a happy song? Has there? Maybe Waltz number 2 is happy. Like, even the ones that sound happy aren't happy.
Yeah, I think they're sarcastically happy. I was thinking about that earlier. I was like, I'm not a huge Eliott Smith fan, but I can't think of anything of his I've ever heard and been like, oh yeah, this is a really happy song.
Yeah, like the dude's just feeling great. It doesn't.
And he was a really dark person. You know, that sometimes that comes out in what you're doing. If you're true to yourself and that stuff's going on in your life, darkness is going to come out of it. That's just how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, that's and Eliott was always, it still is, the way that I think his lyricism is just unparalleled. I love how he just stitches words together in a way that I couldn't even fathom. But I found myself, like, you know, way back at the top when we first got on the call, trying to break out of something like that, you know, for Never Summer. But there is, it's certainly always going to live in my heart. Like, dude, Eliott is just not something you listen to when you're happy, and it definitely, a whole album, or if you're listening to him for more than a day, something's wrong, and it'll beat you down.
He always makes me wonder what would have happened if he'd gotten in a band with someone that could have, like, helped push a lot of this stuff, because he reminds me of, like, even Brian Wilson to an extent. A lot of these guys that have these deep, dark dives that are just musical geniuses, and 9 times out of 10 you don't know unless you listen to the solo work. There's a lot of artists that, you know, when they're in the band and they're co-writing or they're working with someone else, there's always someone in the room that can help them pull out of it. You know, for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it's the drummer. It's funny, I hate on the drummer all the time in the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but he's like the happy guy that keeps the forward energy. And if you listen to John Frusciante's, the guitar player solo stuff, it's sadder than this. And it's like sadder a lot than this. So it's some interesting stuff about that kind of vibe that can come together when there's multiple people going. I've always wondered what it would have been like if Eliott Smith had found a band and knock on solo, and you know what kind of different stuff we'd have and how highly we'd think of him. It's always an interesting thought for me.
I think having a band in general is just a fucking huge thing. Because look at like anyone's solo career. Even if you look at like when Motley Crue split up, like Nikki Sixx and Vince Neil's solo stuff was just depressing as shit. But then it's like, you know, as a band, they were all fun and happy again afterward.
And as much as I adore Eliott Smith, like I truly do, I feel like if he had found a band, I don't know. I mean, it would definitely. I think it would lean towards like very complicated pop music.
Yeah,
You know, it would have Elliott's touches in there, but it'd be pop rock.
yeah. I don't think his genius would hide, but I almost wonder what the almost Britpop influenced grunge, second wave grunge sound would have been that he would have been involved in, or you know, I don't even know what was around in this era. I guess we still had Radiohead, you know, we had things like Coldplay, God forbid, but you know, there's a lot of bands in that genre. I thought he would fit in. This was just an interesting thought I had earlier since this album was so long. I kind of wanted to bring it up. You guys see what you thought. Okay, we can move on if you want. We can do album art. Give this one a 7.
Oh, I give the album art a 5.
Damn. Give it a 7.5.
Yeah, give it like a 6.
I just didn't like it.
We're bad at talking about album art. It's really funny. We're just like, yeah, it's either a yes or no. I don't know.
It's because it's so subjective. It's so reliant on which individual person's looking at it. Like for me, what I see when I look at that's a dude standing there with some squiggly lines, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if you guys have looked up the full wall, but I think there's a different release that has the full wall in LA. It's the Eliott Smith wall. It's still standing as far as I'm aware. It has been vandalized to hell and back so many times. It's been moved. Roger Waters had to step in one time and make sure it wasn't demolished. But I don't feel like the Figure 8 album art does it justice, because the full wall I was considering getting on my shoulder, because it is really cool. But yeah, just the squiggly lines on its own, not the best.
I don't know, it reminded me of a White Stripes album cover, I think, because it was red and white. I think they just
It had
ruined
some
me.
white stripes on there.
I
so
think
yeah.
it just ruined me for things that are only red and white. So I think that's probably why it scored what it did. I don't know. We talked about it. It's subjective. We don't talk so much about the art. We just like it or don't.
I think art-wise, it's just, man, it's very 2000. it is,
Yeah, it is.
It is so dated. And I also do agree. I don't think this. If I saw this sitting on a shelf at like the record store, I'm not gonna be like, "Yep, that's what's on this album." If I saw that, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
One, I wouldn't pick it up. I'd be like, "That looks fucking terrible." But
It's fair. It doesn't evoke a whole lot.
no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't evoke like anything in me. To me, it's almost like a Craigslist ad that I would just pass over.
Yeah, that's fair. I definitely understand that criticism. I'm jaded just because, you know, I've known the wall for so long, and I think it's I don't know. You like look at the testimonials. It's vandalized in a good way. Also happens. Like people who love Eliott Smith walk by and they don't fix the wall when you know, like we still love you, happy birthday. They'll write song lyrics on there that like impacted people a bunch, and then somebody will do a tag over it and they have to paint over it again and redo the wall. But
I mean, knowing it as a physical place probably made me like it more. If I had understood that connection, I think that would have scored it higher for me.
it's on Sunset Boulevard apparently. I knew it was in LA. I didn't know exactly where it is.
You know what? I think
But yeah.
I've seen it in like movies or drive-bys. It's one of the iconic spots in LA, isn't it? One of the more iconic spots.
I mean, I just know it's been. I'm not that familiar with it. I know it's been saved more times than I can count. And that is a fun little tidbit. There was some big band that was coming through, and Roger Waters. They wanted to destroy it, or a business was gonna buy it. I forget who it was. I'm pretty sure it had to do with a band or a movie. Could have been a business though. And Roger Waters came in and saved the Eliott Smith wall. I don't remember when it was, but yeah, Roger Waters of all people is part of the reason it's still standing.
And the fact that it's in LA makes sense that it has so much drama around it. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there's a funny story where a guy vandalized one of the signs on, I guess, one of the motorways around there to make the oncoming exit make sense. and he literally did it as an art project. He designed the sign, used DOT approved colors, and did such a good job. A lot of members of the government didn't know the DOT didn't change it. And he released it later as a film, the art project of him like sneaking up at night and doing all of this stuff. And I was literally like, what a Los Angeles thing to do. Like the road was bad, so you went out of your way and spent a ton of money doing a really expensive art project, and only after no one could come after you, you release a film about it. What a funny, but I don't know. It just seems like a very LA thing that they're fighting over a wall. That makes sense.
Yeah, 1000%.
All right. If that gets us, we can go to overall. I'm kind of interested to see what everybody's scores are. I gave it an 8.
I also gave it an 8.
I'm bumping it up to an. I have it written down as 7.75, but it's an 8.
I have an 8.
I'm gonna give it a 10.
I see that.
Yeah.
Respect.
I 100% get it. If this came about at a different point of life for me, like if I had been introduced to this at a younger age when I would probably have needed it more, or even if I was more familiar, I would say this would be higher.
Mm-hmm.
I totally get why.
For sure.
And even his earlier stuff too. I feel like Eliott Smith as a whole, like if you get it the right point in your life, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Yep. There are definitely.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I could see that. I thought this was really, really solid. I loved a lot of the tracks, and this is one of the albums that I absolutely hated being critical about. I did not like rating this, but that's because I feel like I would have had a much better time, like actually like sitting back, relaxing, and just letting it happen. And I feel like that's how you have to listen to this album, and that's like the peak way to listen to this. Just turn it on, let it happen, experience it, because it'll make you feel shit.
This is definitely an April album. I want it to be storming outside. I want to hear thunder crackling. I just want to I want to feel depressed to listen to this album. Because, listen to it on a sunny, albeit cold day. It didn't
doesn't
do it
hit
for
the
me.
same. It doesn't hit the same. Yeah, it really doesn't. It's definitely, I would 1000% agree that it's a timepiece. There is, and then like that's not to say as you get older, you're not going to be back in those places. You will, and it will have its place. But yeah, I mean, discovering this, it was a big influence for me to get into music at all, just because I didn't get it. You know what I mean? Like I would listen to, I'll always love like My Chemical Romance, for example, right? Those 4 chord songs, right? You'd sit down, you've never played a guitar before, you try your best, by the end of the night you can play, I'm Not Okay, or whatever the song is.
But can you sing it?
Barring the solos. But Eliott Smith took that vulnerability that I had, not only understood it and like kind of put it in a perspective that I could understand, and like that gave me that feeling of somebody else kind of gets where I'm coming from, but also in a way that's like the way he composes things is fucking weird, and it's super interesting. It just doesn't like, I mean, going back to Can't Make a Sound is a great example. Like, he does Overture, that's a great example, or a great word to describe it. Like, he goes through all of the vibes of the album. LA, I guess LA is not a Junk Bond Trader is probably the best example of it, but like all these crazy instruments and the composure for everything is so off the wall, and it really, even if you're not listening to what he's saying and just what he's playing or whoever's playing it, it's just super, there's so much to take in.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, and I think it doesn't help the length on this one, and that's, we've talked about it so many times. We haven't brought it up yet at this point, but that's the only reason I got an 8 from me. I think if there was 2 tracks less, this is a 10 album all day long for me. And I don't know which 2 tracks I'd cut. That's the other thing is, when I thought that earlier, I was like, okay, so what should disappear? What would I skip that would make this a perfect listen? I have absolutely no idea.
I think it depends on the day.
Yeah.
I think it just needs less time.
Yeah, I have a really good note in here. My only issue is how many songs there are, because it takes some of the individuality of them and strips it away. And I feel like that's what makes the uniqueness of these songs on their own, and it makes them shine so much brighter.
I could see that. I could totally see that.
All right, we ready for?
Yeah, I guess if no one else has anything, and this is the point where he gets to talk about plug his own shit, right? That's our favorite part of the show.
Yeah.
We get to go to our favorite part of the show, our favorite segment of the show. It's called the Plug Yo Shit segment. Mr. Howard, go ahead and plug your shit.
Oh, is this for me? Oh, nice. Well, I, if you are a fan of sadder songs, things are probably gonna change here this year. But I am the vocalist in a band called Never Summer. We are natives to Columbus, Ohio. We do like a mix of metalcore and emo. We are 5 of the very best friends, and we very much enjoy what we do. We'd love for you guys to come give us a follow. Never Summer Band everywhere. Come hang out with us at one of our shows. We don't have anything planned, but we have a few bands left on red out of Columbia, Missouri, and some other friends that have been cooking things up for March and beyond. But yeah, we are. You like a little bit of emo, you like a little bit of metalcore. We're your guys, and our shows are very fun. We'd love to see you there. Come hang out with us. It'll be cool.
Well, awesome.
That's it, really.
Hell yeah, can confirm.
And thank you guys for having me.
Well, we definitely want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you
It's
for
been an
coming
awesome time this time.
Hell yeah. Can confirm the validity of the funness of the awesomeness of the shows. It was a great time seeing you all.
Hell yeah. I'm just happy I could show you guys at least a 7 or 6 or 8 album. That was... Thank you for taking the time.
Hell yeah, we'd love to have you back.
Hey, he got a better result than most people.
That is
That's
very,
very
true.
true.
Yeah, we've actually had a streak of albums we like, which is super weird. I don't think we've absolutely just flushed something down the toilet in the last...
No.
Definitely not this season.
How
It's been a bit.
awkward were
Even-
those if you
even
just
like
had
the
to
last-
flush one down the toilet?
Well, I mean, it would, and what's even more awkward is those were guests in person, so that's what's...
Were they?
I mean,
Who did we destroy in person?
I guess we didn't destroy anybody in person. I guess
Yeah.
we're pretty nice if we have a guest here picking albums.
Max got pretty lit up for the band Camino. Right?
You're talking about Max
From Harmless Habit.
Harmless. Yeah, Harmless Max. Yeah.
To be fair, I think I was the only one even a little bit defending that album.
Yeah,
I
he
didn't hate that one.
he
I thought
brought
that
us
was
something that
alright.
was like so out of genre for everybody. He's like, you guys just don't like this type of music.
Logan, you
Well,
gotta
I
stop
mean,
giving everything
Max,
favors, man.
I've never heard I don't listen to that band, but I know Max is an absolute savant. The dude's crazy at what he does. But dang, rip. That sucks.
He had 2 other ones that weren't too bad.
That is true.
I was kind of worried about
Nice.
tonight because we notoriously hated on it's dropping Jeff Buckley. that was one that I was like, you guys are out of your freaking mind. You can't hate Jeff Buckley. Like you're wrong. Not only should you not do that on the internet, but you're wrong.
Well,
Oh, my opinions are wrong.
think
Most of my Jeff Buckley hate was to piss you and Steven off.
I guess that's fair.
that's valid. That's valid. Even if you don't hate him, just to hate him for fun, piss off your friends. Yeah. Well, fellas, thank you. This has been great. Yeah, I mean, if you guys ever want me back, just let me know. This has been an awesome time. Check out Never Summer. Never Summer Band on all of the social medias, and thank you guys so much.
Alrighty, hell yeah. I think we'll end it on that. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.